Toastmasters, guests and friends. It's a great privilege for me to be able to come here today and share a little bit with you about my life, about where I come from. My name's Paul Sharpe. I come from a small seaside city of Durban, South Africa. I grew up in the suburbs, and next to our home was big African bush. I spent most of my boyhood running around inside there, avoiding piano lessons and snakes. Obviously, I went to high school, but somehow I managed to fail high school. My penance was a year in the military in South Africa. After spending 1 year in the army, I went to university where I was majored in physics. And I studied physics up to a master's degree level. I finally decided to drop out of that in the third year. I came to Taiwan to teach English. After 1 year here, I met my wife, we got married, we traveled a lot, we lived in China. Last year we adopted 2 beautiful little cats, and we joined Toastmasters. Yay! That's where we are today. So in a nutshell, for the most part, my life has been great. I have a loving family, I know I'm well loved by my friends, and I have many great friends. But like all lives, my life has had its fair share of challenges. South Africa, in the time I grew up, was a very dysfunctional country, was a dysfunctional time, and I grew up in a dysfunctional family, as evidenced by the fact that 4 of us, up until the recent past, were living in 4 different countries on 3 separate continents. Of course, these issues in my family created a lot of issues inside myself, issues of self-esteem, issues of self-confidence, issues of, am I good enough? Am I worthy enough? Of course, as a teenager, you can imagine, with all these things inside of me, I became a very lonely teenager. I was very shy. I was an introvert. You wouldn't believe it now. But I was. After the high school, I went to the military, as I said. And inside the military, I was exposed to an extreme hatred. A hatred I've never seen before. White people hating black people. I saw things as a young 18-year-old I wish I'd never seen. I saw young 18-year-old white boys with a God Rambo-like complex, abusing the dispossessed, abusing the poor, just because of the color of their skin. After that, I went to university. The university I went to had 10,000 students, of which about 50 to 100 were white people. I reached out to the Indian and the black communities, and many of them were very loving and encouraging. But there was a small minority that hated me because I was white. And some of them would come up to me and say, 1 settler, 1 bullet. And because I'm white, I'm a settler. And so this hatred and these convergences of hatred came into my life. I became a very bitter and angry young man. I became someone who did not really value my life. If somebody looked at me the wrong way, I'd probably punch them. I decided that my life needed to change. I decided that I needed to do something extreme. So I packed my bags and I came to Taiwan to teach English. But as you know, those things you don't leave behind. They come with you. After 1 year, I met my wife in Taiwan. And she realized that I was a very angry and bitter young man. And so she pleaded with me to go to church. So eventually I went to church. And in that church I met many wonderful people. Some are sitting here today. And in those first 3 or 4 years in church, I was happy, I found some peace. But then I got an offer to go to China. It was the wrong thing to do, with the wrong person, in the wrong place. And all those emotions that I hadn't dealt with came rushing back. I became angry at the circumstance, I became bitter towards this person. I became frustrated with everything. And once again, the issues of self-esteem, the issues of self-confidence, the issue of self-worth resurfaced. It got to the point where I wondered, is my life worth living? As you can imagine, it was a very painful experience for my wife and for myself. But I wanted to change. I wanted my life to get better because I didn't want to live in this darkness and this depression. And one day I was on a visa run to Hong Kong. I was in a bookstore called Page One in Times Square. And I found this book called Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. I'd heard of emotional intelligence before. My wife had done that in some corporate classes. But, you know, I'm a South African, I'm a rugby player, right? Emotional intelligence is not for tough guys like me. It's not for those who can break, you cannot be broken. It's for weak guys. It's for people who are cowards. Or women. It's not for men like me, no. But I decided to buy this book and I took this book home with me. And when I took this book home, I started to read it. It was the first time in my life I believed. I believed that I was no longer a slave to my emotions. I was no longer a slave to my anger. I could choose. I could choose. And from that day to this, I committed myself to controlling one thing in my life. Was my anger, my temper, my rage. And from that day to this, I've largely succeeded. Of course, there are difficult days. Being unemployed for a year has led to some issues of self-confidence and led to some issues of, can I still get a job? But I know, I believe that inside of me, the way I react is my responsibility, my choice. This challenge to myself is best summarized in the words of the famous German death camp survivor, Viktor Frankl, who said, "Everything can be taken from a man, except the last of human freedoms, the freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance." And so, my fellow Toastmasters and friends, like I challenge myself, I challenge you all, that you, from this moment on, will, every minute of every hour of every day, choose, carefully choose those attitudes and emotions that will not only empower and encourage and enable and inspire and build you up, but also those people you love, those people you like, those beautiful strangers that come into your life every day, and even those people you hate. Toastmasters and friends, do you accept this challenge? God bless you.